What's up, kings and queens? It's your boy Dan from Daft Previews, and in this video, I'm going to share with you my best bets for round one, well, the second week of round one in the NRL. We've got 6 games to go through. I'm not going to preview every single one, but I am going to let you know what bets I have already placed so you can get on these before all of these lines move. If that sounds interesting, let's get into it. So the first set of plays I'm going to share with you, I would say the 2 safest picks for head-to-head winners. So I'm combining these 2 together to make a multi. I've got $2 odds. For those of you in the US, if you're watching this, it's plus 100. So if you bet these 2 to win, you pretty much be doubling your money. So the very first game I want to talk through is the Newcastle Knights versus the Canberra Raiders. That kicks off for us Thursday at 8 p.m. But in this particular game, the Knights versus the Raiders is a very interesting one. I think it's going to be a great game. Firstly, I'll let you know what I'm picking here. It's the Newcastle Knights, and I'm taking them for a few reasons. One, Newcastle are at home, and they play much better at home compared to when they are on the road. Last season, they had 12 games at home, and they won 9 of them. The Canberra Raiders, they went 6-6 whilst they were on the road while they were traveling. A couple of key stats to mention in this game. The Knights have won 6 of their last 8 games against the Canberra Raiders, and the Raiders, they've also lost their last 4 games on the road, so away from home. Now, looking through the lineups here and just pretty much my breakdown of each team, the Raiders, their strength has always been their forward pack. Now, whilst they still have a very strong lineup in their forwards, they are weakened by the absence of Corey Horsburgh and Elliot Whitehead. The Knights, they're missing Brayley in this one, who's their hooker, number 9, although he was out most of the last 2 seasons, to be honest. So they're not going to be missing too much. They do field a very similar team in this game, which beat the Canberra Raiders last season. They actually knocked the Canberra Raiders out of the final race. The difference maker in this game, though, is this Knights backline. Ponga, he's clearly the best player on the field. The backline is somewhat stacked. Gagai is a rep player. Bradman Best is a rep player as well. Jackson Hastings, Tyson Gamble, not in the halves, but I think the halves really balance each other out. So there's no real strength on either team there. The Canberra Raiders probably only have one X factor in their backline, and that's Xavier Savage. But he's playing out of position on the wing. Could clearly do more, wreak more havoc if he was playing at fullback, which he is not. So I feel like they've missed an opportunity there, but they're going with Jordan Rapana as well. But there's a chance that they could switch throughout the game. So yeah, really leaning on the Knights here. At home, they have the better backline. They do have the best player in this game. I think these forward packs are evenly matched as they're currently assembled. Knights at home, first game of the season. Raiders on the road, not really rating them much this year. At $1.40, I think it's a fair price, so I'm taking the Knights to win in this one. So that's our very first leg. And in the second leg, I'm taking the Parramatta Eels to beat the Canterbury Bulldogs. So the Eels are at $1.43. Very similar to the Newcastle Knights, taking another home favourite on the second leg. So the Eels, they were 7-5 at home last season. The Bulldogs, sorry, too much NBA. The Bulldogs, 3-9, tied for the 3rd worst record on the road in the competition. Now, the Eels have won 7 out of their past 8 games against the Canterbury Bulldogs. The Bulldogs have played 15 games at CommBank Stadium. Some of these were their own home games, and they've only won 2. 2 out of 15 games within this stadium. And in the last 7 years, the Bulldogs have only won in round one only once. 1 out of 7 games to open up the season, the Bulldogs have won. So, look, the Canterbury Bulldogs, they have recruited quite well this season, and they did recruit well the year before. So they are a much more competitive team compared to last year, although I do think it's going to take some time to build some chemistry. They do have some quality players in key positions, but they've got a stack of depth. I don't see them bursting out of the blocks to beat a Parramatta team. They underdelivered last season, and I think Parramatta is going to be seeking redemption. So looking at this Dogs team, new faces, we see Blake Taff at fullback. He's a pretty good player, but this is a very important position. He's playing his first game for the Dogs. We've also got Stephen Crichton in the centres, probably the best centre in the game. But once again, first game at a new club. Josh Adokar, he joined the Dogs not too long ago, a couple of years. One of the best wingers in the competition at the time. Joined the Dogs. Didn't hear much from him. Similar to Matt Burden, one of the best players for Penrith. Joined the Dogs. Stuck. Reid Marnie, ex-Parramatta player. It was a great X factor for them. Last year, he was a speed bump. Everyone was running over Reid Marnie last year. Same as Kickout. Unfortunately, a lot of injuries. Wasn't at his best for sure. Didn't get many mentions, but even his form dropped since joining this Bulldogs team. But if you look through, they've got a lot of names in here that you'd be very familiar with. So The Bulldogs do have a better team, but in round one, even Drew Hutchinson, new player, starting halfback, very important position. So they've got a lot of new players in very important positions. Look, at some point in time, they'll probably go on a run. They'll probably have some good performances, but I don't see that happening in round one. Looking at the Parramatta Eels, very minor changes to the team that they had last season. They still had the big three: Clint Gutherson, Dylan Brown, Mitchell Moses, all very important positions. The majority of that spine stays intact. These three, they look great in the trials as well. So one thing I'm really looking forward to see is Will Penasini. So he was great in the trials. He was great last year. Still a very young player, and I think he can take a leap. I think he'll be in Origin contention, and I just think he's got the advantage physically in most matchups. Crichton, obviously no slouches, but I'm pinning Will Penasini for a breakout year, and I think the Dogs are just going to struggle for some chemistry and some cohesion. But I think it's going to be a good game, but I just think the class of the Parramatta Eels is what's going to get them through this. They obviously have the Origin front row of RCG, Junior Paulo, Jermaine Hopgood. He was on track to play Origin last year. Cardi Party, he's actually improved quite a lot. His errors are out of his game, so he's very efficient. And Sean Lane, injury-riddled season last year. So I think these forward packs, I guess in the back row, I would say very evenly matched. But in the front row, Max King, Famasili, no match for Junior Paulo and Regan Campbell-Gillard. So I just think the Eels will establish things through the middle. They've got the fullback and the halves to create some points. And playing at home, I just think the Eels will be way too good for the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs will put up a fight, but the Eels will be too strong. So taking the Eels and the Newcastle Knights as head-to-head. I've got that at $2 odds. You might find it better. You might find it worse. But if you're only going to make one play on the NRL this weekend, that's definitely one that I would consider. So jumping into sports bet very quickly just to see if there are any other great plays on the market at the moment. And I just want to share my thoughts real quick about what I'm seeing and my reasons for avoiding or choosing to play them. So on the Friday, we've got the New Zealand Warriors versus the Cronulla Sharks. Now, a lot of people are going to be picking New Zealand purely because they're playing at home. But I've got a sneakingly suspicion that the Sharks could upset them here. I think the hype around the Wars was massive last year. But it's going to be difficult for them to take that leap, given a lot of the core of their club. They're not young and up-and-coming players, right? There's a lot of people in this Warriors team who are pretty much in a window of win now. And I just don't know if they're going to be able to lift. They're not going to catch as many teams off guard. I think the way that they play is somewhat predictable. So it's almost Penrith-like, but RTS is back, which is great. Sean Johnson, he's in the back end of his career. They've got Tuapiki at fullback though, young player. Their forward pack, they're all in the prime of their careers. The win is pretty much here. It's pretty much a win now year, but at the same time, the Cronulla Sharks are in a very similar position. I don't see too much improvement from the Sharks from last year. You can really take last year's form into this game. I think it's going to be closer than the line suggests, the 4.5. I'd probably be leaning for the Cronulla Sharks here. I understand the game is at New Zealand, but at the same time, I'd help it. That's what my gut says. The Warriors, they have won quite a few. The last time they lost at home was against Souths in round 18. Since then, they've rattled off 5 consecutive wins at home, whereas the Cronulla Sharks, somewhat patchy end to the year, lack consistency, but I think still have a very quality team. And I think the price for the New Zealand Warriors is too short, so I wouldn't be willing to take that. Melbourne Storm versus the Penrith Panthers. The Penrith Panthers have a great winning record over the Storm. Ever since that grand final loss, really, Penrith have been dominating them. But at the same time, Penrith Panthers have lost more players. I think there's some news around whether Munster's going to play. I'm not too close to that at all, but I think that's going to be a great game to watch. My original lean when this came out was to take the under, but I think the points line started to move down, so 36.5. New rules, first game of the season. Do we see a grindy contest? I'm not overly confident in this one, but Penrith usually very stout defensively in round one. In attack, they can be a little bit clunky to start the season, but defensively, they're usually on point. They just lost the World Club Challenge, so they've got that as added motivation. But at the same time, Melbourne got to beat these Penrith Panthers eventually, right? The other one's the Gold Coast Titans versus St. George Illawarra Dragons. So these are two teams that I doubt are going to get even close to the finals. They'll be sitting at the bottom of the table. There could be a lot of points in this game because these teams suck. The total points line in this one's 42.5, so it's one of the highest ones. But surprising, when these teams have matched up, you'd expect a lot of points, but they tend to go over, especially at Seabus up in Queensland. But I don't think that's a good game to bet on when it comes picking your winners. I think that's probably a good game for some try scorers, perhaps, but just betting on it right now, if I was taking the emotion and the excitement out of betting and I just said, what are we going to bet on to win money? I think best not to avoid it. Best to avoid it. And then the last game on Sunday, it's the Dolphins versus the North Queensland Cowboys, first Queensland derby of the season. I'd personally be leaning on the Dolphins here. I think they've recruited very well. They got Herbie Farnworth. They've got Tom Flegler. They got, what's his name from the bloody Bulldogs? Jesus Christ, I don't remember his freaking name. Avarillo. So, bit of spark there. I like the Dolphins recruits. I think they've picked up some pieces that they were really missing. Whereas the Cowboys, they haven't made too many changes to their team. I didn't think their team would do well last year, and they didn't. Chad Townsend is a year older, and he's steering them around. Tom Dearden hasn't shown too much in his development, but I'm just not loving this Cowboys team this year, and I think this game will be closer than the line indicates. The line's at 5.5, almost $2 odds there, so I'd really be leaning to the Dolphins, but I think the Dolphins can upset them. In my tipping comp, I've picked the Dolphins, but I've also tipped the Sharks as well. But if you were to ask me what's a bet I need to get a win this week, all I'd be saying is just, it's early in the season. Let's see how these teams play. Right now, I bet on Parramatta to win and Newcastle to win, and I just enjoy the show. Watch the rest of the games, compile some data, figure out how teams are playing, and then I'll give you more detail in the next video next week. So that's very much it. It's a very simple video. It's a quick one, but being transparent, that's all I'm betting on for the NRL this week. Just going to sit back, watch and enjoy, run that money, that player prop one. If you're on the Discord, I obviously might come up with some same game multis closer to the game, as I usually do. But right now, what I can say with confidence, Knights and Eels, baby. So I'll catch you guys in the next one. Hope you're enjoying the NBA content, by the way. Be good. Peace.